What's up, psychedelic investors? My name's James, and we have a fantastic episode for you. We're actually going to do something a little bit different from what we usually do. Usually we talk about the more underlying issues that kind of hold up the entire psychedelic medicines industry, but today we're going to be taking a look at the stock prices. Now, I know that we don't usually do that on this channel because, frankly, I don't care how the stock movement between day to day, if a company's up 2% or down 2%, that just doesn't matter to me whatsoever. All that matters to me is the long-term thesis. In 5-10 years, will company X be much higher than it is now because of the underlying principle of psychedelics being able to disrupt the pharmaceutical industry as it relates to mental health? If the answer to that is yes, great, I love it. If the answer is no, I'm not going to buy that company. And this is why I don't really care about short-term stock price movement. It just doesn't really interest me too much. Now, having said that, as I'm sure most of you guys will know, the last few months when it comes to stock prices of a lot of these companies, be it MindMed, Compass, Atai, etc., has not been pretty. These companies have been down a lot in some cases. So what we're going to do in this episode is first we're going to look at how much are these companies down in the past 3 months. Then we're going to look at some potential reasons behind the fall. Then we are going to give you a little bit of my opinion on this and where I think things are going to go in the future. But before we get into all of that good stuff, you guys already know what to do. Like, subscribe, smash that notifications bell, comment down below, show it to your dog, etc. And also, super important, don't forget to go check out psychedelicspotlight.com. They are our partner, and they do so much fantastic work in the psychedelics world. They have lots of great cultural pieces. They have lots of great investing pieces. I get a lot of my research from there, and of course, they have a fantastic podcast and newsletter, and I'm not just saying that because I am featured in both. I might be saying that a little bit. I'm kidding, they are fantastic. Go check out psychedelicspotlight.com. Alrighty guys, without further ado, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy this episode. To start up, we're going to put up on the screen the stock prices of a lot of these companies and look at how they've performed over the past few months. So we are, of course, going to start with MindMed. So as we can see here, they are currently sitting at $2.27 American. And if we zoom out to the past 3 months, we can see that that is down from $3.64 3 months ago. If we take a look at how much of a percentage drop that is in just 3 months, we can see it is a whopping 36.36%. In other words, over the past 3 months, MindMed has dropped by more than a third, which, as any MindMed shareholder will tell you, has got to hurt at least a little bit. But the first thing that I want to drive home to you guys is that this isn't a MindMed specific issue. This is a wider sector, a psychedelic medicine sector issue. And to show that point, let's take a look at Atai stock. So as we can see, they're currently sitting at $12.60, and over the past 3 months, they have dropped almost exactly the same amount by 32.45%, also almost a third that they have dropped. Clicking over to Compass Pathways, we can see that they're at $31.15, and if we take a look at how much that has fallen over the past 3 months, that is 14.13%. So less bad than MindMed and Atai, but still not a fun position for anybody to be in, having your stocks drop almost 15% in 3 months. And it's not just limited to the big players in this field. If we take a look at FieldTrip here, we click on the 3 months, click on the percentage, and we can see that they are down by 15.56%. Cybin is down by, give it a second, click on the 3 months, click on the percent. Cybin is down by about 19.85 or 20% in the past 3 months. So we could look at all the other different companies in this field as well, and maybe 1 or 2 of them might buck the trend. But when it comes to all of the major companies in the psychedelic medicines field, for the most part, they're all down significantly over the past 3 months. And just one more example to drive this home is if we take a look at the Horizons Psychedelic Stock ETF, which is just a passive ETF that tracks the wider psychedelic medicines industry. Unfortunately, they don't give us percentages here, but we can see that it went from $8.11 3 months ago to $6.67 today, which is a little under 25% drop. So there too, in the wider market, we can see it's dropping. And just to highlight that this is specific to the psychedelic medicine sector as opposed to the entire market. If we look at the S&P 500 index here over the past 3 months, we can see that it is more or less stable. It's up 0.5% over 3 months. And if we take a look at the NASDAQ here over 3 months, give it a second for the computer to load, folks, we can see that they are at down 0.83%, so down, let's say, 1%. And even though it's down, we can see that the psychedelic medicines industry has performed a lot worse than the wider market. It has been underperforming the wider market. Alrighty, let's throw my beautiful face back up on the screen, and let's talk about the reasons why this might be down. Like, this is not an insignificant drop. This probably should be discussed, even though I don't like discussing the day-to-day stock prices. So, why have the stocks in the psychedelic medicines industry dropped so much in the last 3 months? Well, I would say, first and foremost, the main reason is just a lack of news. If we look at the meteoric rise of a lot of these psychedelic medicines companies, take MindMed for example, as they were doing their 10x, as they were getting added onto the NASDAQ, they were being featured on Yahoo Finance, they were being on MSNBC, they were being talked about on Jim Cramer, were on famous YouTube channels like Meet Kevin. They were all over the place in your face. Now, it's kind of calmed down a bit. They aren't making appearances on mainstream news media. They are not making appearances on large YouTube networks. And that doesn't mean that they're not doing anything. They are working diligently in the background, all of these companies, working on their clinical trial progress. But when you're not in the public eye for so long, and yes, there's been news, but most of the news has been minor, progressional, like, hey, we're progressing this clinical trial, or hey, we're progressing this clinical trial, nothing huge, major, earth-shattering. When you're in a situation where for months and months and months, we just don't have a lot of big news, well, it's likely that people will lose interest, and some people are going to sell out. And some people are going to take profit and sell. For example, I took a little bit of profit, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months ago. I forget the exact date, because it was the responsible thing for me to do. And we're going to get into how to be responsible in a few minutes, so stick around for that. But what I'm trying to say here is, from my perspective, the main reason that these stocks are all down over the past 3 months is a lack of important news, a lack of coverage. If the case were there was negative news, and this was the reason why the stocks were falling. Let's say that company X came out with a big psychedelic study, and they're like, turns out that MDMA isn't actually very good, guys. Well, then that would be reasonable to see these big drops in the stock prices, but that's not what's happening. To the extent that there has been news at all, it's mostly just been moderately positive news. Like, we've taken the next step towards starting our next clinical trial, stuff like that. So I would say that is by and far the main reason why these stocks are down. It's just lack of news, and the news that has happened, as anybody that watches this channel knows, is moderately positive. Nothing negative really has happened, with one exception, which we'll also get to in a moment. But yeah, the market cares, and this is an idea that I want to hammer home to you guys. I've talked about it before, and I'm going to talk about it again. The market cares more about short-term gains than long-term fundamentals. If we have science coming out that is showing that psychedelics are extremely useful in helping to treat mental health issues, but these companies aren't going to be able to get a profit for 3 years as they make it through the clinical trial process, then people are going to be like, well, what have you done for me recently, bro? Like, I want money in my pocket yesterday. I don't want to have to wait 5 years for this. The market is impatient. It doesn't want to wait around for these long, difficult, complicated scientific studies to be completed. So as long as we're not getting any positive news updates, the market is going to, unfortunately, decrease a little bit, which gets into the idea that this entire sector is extremely volatile. And we have talked about this before, but not recently. If you are invested in the psychedelic medicine space, you need to understand that there are going to be huge upswings and then downswings. And we are currently in a downswing. And these downswings, they may last a little bit of time. They may last a month, 3 months, a year, 2 years. I hope not. I really, fingers crossed, hope that this is the floor and we're never going to see these prices again. This is the lowest it will ever get. But I mean, it's possible, guys. I don't have a crystal ball. The way that I look at it is if I buy company X, let's say if I buy MindMed at price X down here, and I believe that based on the scientific literature, that once they are able to bring their drugs to market, that their value is going to be all the way up here. I don't know if you can actually see that on the camera or not, so I'm gonna go down a little bit. If you buy it here and you expect the price to be all the way up here in 4 or 5 years, then it doesn't matter if in the interim the price drops down to here and it stays there for a year or two. And we could be seeing that. Again, I'm not saying we are. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But this is a volatile industry as a whole, and if you're invested in it, you need to be prepared for that. If you are invested in the psychedelic medicines industry, you need to be a long-term investor, keep your eye on the ball, and keep laser focused on the science that these companies are doing, because that is one of the main determinants of whether or not these companies are going to succeed or not, is whether or not they are putting out good science and showing that their products are better at treating mental health conditions like depression, PTSD, anxiety, ADHD, addiction, etc. than our current methods, which, by the way, basically don't work at all for a lot of people out there. So that's what you need to stay focused on, guys. And if the stock is down now, it's not the biggest deal. Now, on a related note, I find it amazing how short-term some of these supposed long-term investors are. Because everybody can say you're a long-term investor that's planning on waiting it out for 5-10 years while the stock is rocketing up and 10xing. But the real determination of your mettle is how you react in the periods of time where it drops by 10%, when it drops by 30%, when it drops by 50%. Let's hope that doesn't happen, but you know, it's possible. So all I'm trying to say is this is a volatile sector. You got to keep patient, and if you do believe in the long-term thesis, then if anything, this is just a great buying opportunity to get more. Not financial advice, by the way. And actually, I'm going to go on the opposite direction for a second. And again, this isn't financial advice, but if I were ever to give financial advice, this is about as close as it would get. When you're investing your money, guys, you have to be responsible. Nobody else on this planet is responsible for managing and growing your wealth other than you. This is a volatile sector, and there is no guarantee of success. Even though Super Bulls like me might think there's lots of probability of success, there is no guarantee of success. Don't be going all in on this sector. Make sure that you are somewhat diversified. Like personally, I'm a Super Bowl and I only have a maximum of 10% of my entire portfolio in the psychedelic medicines industry. If it goes above that, I will sell some because I need to be responsible with how I'm handling my money, and you guys should be too. Now, having said that, going back on the other foot, because the psychedelic stocks have been underperforming relative to my portfolio, it has actually dropped somewhat from like 10% to maybe like 7% of my portfolio. So I'm actually probably in the next few months going to be, for the first time in a while, buying some more psychedelic stocks to kind of get that percentage of my portfolio back up to 10%. Alrighty guys, I have a lot of notes here, so if you just excuse me for 1 second, I'm just going to quickly read over my notes to make sure I said everything that I want to say, and lo and behold, I didn't, of course. So, getting back to MindMed specifically, we talked about how this is a sector-wide phenomenon that's happening when the stock price is falling, but there actually was what can be construed as negative piece of news when talking about MindMed. And this actually happened a while ago. It happened more than 3 months ago. And to help illustrate this, we're going to throw the stock price back up on the screen here for MindMed. And so originally we saw this. We saw the 3-month stock decline. And it looked pretty scary. It was down by, like I said, like 30-something%. But let's zoom out for a second and go to 6 months. And we get a little bit of a different picture. First of all, the stock price is only down by about 16.73%, which is a lot less scary than down by 30, whatever it was, 35%. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is we can see that this decline has actually been happening for longer than 3 months. It's been happening for 4 or 5 months, about the time when MindMed's CEO, J.R. Ron, abruptly decided to step down from the company. And personally, as I said at the time, I didn't necessarily have an issue with this. I like my science companies to be led by scientists. J.R. Ron was not a scientist. He was a great public persona for the company. But he got replaced by somebody who is much more fluent in the scientific literature, Robert Barrow, than himself. And I said at the time that I think that this is a good decision and it didn't bother me at all. Having said that, it is easy to understand how it could be construed and how some people might think, and I'm not saying they're wrong, they could be right, that a CEO resigning from a company when it supposedly has a bright future is not a good sign. And then recently, like within a week or two ago, we had Bruce Linton, who is one of the original big investors and a member of the board. He resigned also. So you can see that that might be considered a negative sign. Personally, I'm not too worried. I don't really care about the business executives too much. I care more about the science the company is doing, and they have, over the past year, built an absolute smashing all-star team of scientists. So I'm not too worried about that, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out that that one negative catalyst for MindMed did, in fact, exist. Alrighty, so just to do a very quick recap here. First thing that we saw is that all the stocks in the psychedelic sector basically are down significantly between 15 and 35%. Second thing is when we look at the news trying to figure out why these stocks might be down, is we don't see anything negative other than the one MindMed CEO stepping down issue, but this is a sector-wide trend we're seeing. There isn't any negative news out there that's saying like, oh no, psychedelics aren't going to work to treat mental health care, and in fact, to the extent that there has been any news, it's been relatively positive news of these companies continuing to execute on their goals and moving forward with their clinical trial process. And how this is a very volatile industry, and you should expect to see swings like this. In fact, in one of my earlier videos, when MindMed was in the middle of like its 10x, I told people, like, guys, you should expect this to pull back significantly at some point. And maybe 50%, maybe something like that, maybe something terrifying. And I just wanted to make sure that that was out there so that people understood that this isn't going to be only going up. There are going to be periods where it falls. And if you get cold feet, if you get paper hands, and you leave now, not financial advice, and you leave now, but the company or any of these companies, the sector, ends up skyrocketing in the future in 3 to 5 years when they get FDA approval to treat PTSD, to treat addiction, to treat ADHD, to treat depression, anxiety, etc., then you might consider selling when it's down and you only sold because it was down because other people are selling to be a very bad decision. Now, I want to close this out on some positive news. So, there is actually going to be one really big piece of news that happens later this year, and that is Compass Pathways is going to be releasing the result of their Phase 2b clinical trial testing treating treatment-resistant depression with psilocybin, their formulation of psilocybin COMP360. Why is this going to be big news? This is actually going to be the biggest news of the year, and why is this the case, basically, is the question I'm asking. And that is because it will be the largest clinical trial testing treating mental health conditions with psychedelics that has ever been done. They have over 200 people in this clinical trial. So if they are able to confirm what earlier, smaller studies with several dozen people have been showing. For example, the MAPS trial that showed that PTSD was effectively treated with MDMA, something like close to 70% of people were straight up cured. Or another trial that showed that psilocybin was 4 times more effective at treating depression than SSRIs. If once we start getting into larger scale trials, if the data continues to come back positive, then it's, in my opinion, basically game over. So that's not to say that if these results come back, let's say December, if these results come back and they're absolutely gangbusters, the best thing that we could possibly hope for, again, knock on wood, the best thing we could possibly hope for, I don't know if the market is going to react or not, because this is going to be something that, again, is going to have implications 3-5 years down the road. It's not going to have implications on the next quarter's revenues, because these companies are mostly still pre-revenue. So I don't know if the market is going to react or not, or if it's just going to take it in stride, and who knows, the stock might even fall, because the market is stupid in the short term. Just to give you one example, I remember when I first started getting into Tesla investing like 4-ish years ago, and Tesla kept having these events where they were showing off their groundbreaking technology that they were about to commercialize, like their driver assistance programs, like their battery technology. And the market just didn't react at all. They're like, oh, you're not going to have this for a couple years, then we're not going to do anything about it. And then, of course, everybody that said that missed out on one of the biggest growth stories in history. We might be witnessing something similar, guys. If in December or whenever it happens, these results come back and they are extremely positive, I don't know if the market's going to move or not. And if it doesn't, that will be our opportunity. So guys, that's about it. I hope that you are still with me. I hope that you were able to stick with all of the rambling, the fuzzy thoughts, me going all over the place. And if you did, I love you. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your dog, hit that comment button, do all that good stuff, and check out psychedelicspotlight.com. They produce so much good content. With that, guys, I love you all. Peace. I'll see you next time.